Welcome to Framework and the latest episode of Framework's John Carpenter's The Podcast. It's time to talk about Christine. Have you seen this one before today, Al?
No, this is my first time experiencing this. This is a movie, a hole in both my John Carpenter and Stephen King fandoms.
Oh, my.
Because I read pretty much everything Stephen King wrote up until about 2005. And Christine is like one of the handful of books that I skipped over.
Well, it's classic era. It is, right in the mid 80s. It's kind of when he was like around the height of his cocaine problems. And, kind of when he was turning into a factory. And it's like, well, what if a haunted dog? What if a haunted car? And
right.
Very much one of those.
Yeah, it's a lesser one.
Sure.
There's a reason why I skipped over this and why I do not like this movie. And it's mainly that I don't give a shit about cars. And more crucially, I think I'm not scared of them. Like it's not quite the Mangler territory where, that is an evil possessed industrial laundry press that
Good stuff.
Feels like you could get away from it if you really put your mind to it. Mm-hmm. We're not quite in that territory because Christine can move around of her own accord. But I feel like if my life depended on it, I could get out of the way of a car. You
go in the house, yeah. Right.
I spend more time than I want to every day just trying to like 4-point turn my car into my tiny garage space that it can barely fit into, and like just how difficult it is to back it in an alley that is supposedly built to pass cars and put into a place that is built to house a car. Just how difficult and delicate that operation is. It's really, I don't know. When Buddy the Bully is running for his life away from the flaming car straight down the middle of the road at the end of the night, just go to the side, go into the field, buddy. What's wrong with you?
There's a way this film is not really operating in objective reality. Sometimes I would say it's sort of melodrama about a haunted car in a lot of ways. So I don't know that I can cut some slack. It's a teenage story. It's about having on your first car, your first girlfriend, and bullies and friendship and teenager stuff. That's sort of what it's about. It just happens to be a haunted car because it's Stephen King in his Coke era, just churning them out. This is like a 700-page book, by the way. This is an insanely long book. Yeah, yeah.
No, I thought this was like a novella.
Not at all. Not way too long. Way over long.
Steve, come on now. Mm-hmm. I know cocaine's a hell of a drug, but this is about a haunted car that drives out of the junkyard at night to run people out. I mean, okay, I guess it's sort of about Arnie, the geek, red pilling himself to a degree. Like that's, I suppose, this quote unquote scarier stuff is the shining element of it, where the evil spirit of the car is sort of driving him to sort of self-actualization, I guess, where he's becomes kind of the cool guy after being the dork, and then into madness. Although I guess, it's not till the very end that he's actually doing anything, right? That he's attacking any of these people. Like Christine's doing it all herself until then.
He's just an asshole till the end, yes. Although, I mean, I think that the movie is kind of having fun with like, well, is it Arnie or is it the car itself doing these murders? And, I think just because you know what kind of movie you're watching, it's the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've tinted the windows so you can't see in. There's a mystery element to it. How haunted is this car after all? Yeah.
Well, I think it's answered fairly early on.
In the opening scene, yes.
Yeah. It's not just the car can like drive itself or, manipulate the radio.
Like Bumblebee, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Bumblebee. This would actually be a decent double feature with Bumblebee, I think.
Yep.
Light side, dark side of like, the girl finds the Autobot and the boy finds the Decepticon. But it also apparently can make people sitting in it choke on their hamburger.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, it's evil.
Why not? And then it can repair itself. It can, not just like, I don't know, service its engine, but like unbreak the glass of the mirrors and reupholster itself in a way that's like, oh, okay, so this is no longer a haunted car thing. This is just a general ghost thing, I guess, a poltergeist. situation.
This is the big difference between the book and the movie. The book is actually, this is really close adaptation of the book. All the characters are right out of the book. Pretty much everything that happens is what happens in the book. It is a very close adaptation with one big exception, which is in the book. The car is literally haunted by the ghost of the former owner, which is sort of a, it's sort of it's the brother of the junk shop guy. Robert Blossoms plays the old creepy man. You know, that character is represented in this film, but he is the source of the evil in the novel. Just a creepy old guy that has kind of taken over the car, and it is in the book. In the movie, of course, you know, the car is evil before it gets off the assembly line. It is an evil object, and I would say that's much more effective. First off, you don't get to do the weird romantic triangle between Arnie, his girlfriend, and the car if it's just the ghost of an old man. Or I think he does do it.
That's wild to me that, in 700 pages that whole angle is missing. That's like I guess the most interesting thing in this movie.
I mean, it's kind of there, but it's worse because it's the ghost of an old man.
But it's the ghost of an old man, but the car is still called Christine.
Yeah, it's not a great book either.
Yeah.
In fact, the movie is an improvement on the book in just about every way, I'd say. Even though this is the longest Carpenter film I think we've talked about.
Yeah, and it's not a good movie, I don't think.
I like it. I like it.
All the air went out of my tires 30 seconds into this thing.
Bad to the bone instead of
exactly. I want that Carpenter synth score. Instead, it's just a revving engine and then George Thorogood, like literally playing Bad to the Bone. Like, oh no. This
is a bit of a gut punch.
Your strengths.
Yeah, you're sitting down, kind of excited to hear what's he come up with for this one. And it's like he's come up with Bad to the Bone. Yeah.
Yeah.
They cut a George Thorogood cameo out of this, apparently.
They should have cut the song.
Is this the first time anyone used it? And who knows? Who knows if this is the first time anyone used Bad to the Bone in such a fashion? But it's a good 8 years before T2.
Yeah, at least T2 is being sort of tongue in cheek with it. I feel like, I don't know, but T2 had a good score actually. I mean, but Cameron is not somebody I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see this new Cameron score the way that I want a Carpenter theme song. You know. That's the least I expect out of a Carpenter movie, even the lesser one.
Mm-hmm. There's some good synth in this, just not a real score per se.
Like an hour in, you get a little bit of a little synth lick, and I'm like, it just sharpens my disappointment of like, this is what we should have been getting this whole time. One of the things this is going for it is a pretty good cast, I would say.
I agree.
Just a plethora of that guys. You know, you got Robert Protsky. Of Thief and Home Alone 2 fame.
Wonderful, yeah.
You got Cougar from Top Gun.
Oh yeah. Of course.
Yeah, he's like the main, the friend. I guess he was just like in 1980 through 1984. You just like you needed a second banana. You went to this guy. Do you know that guy directed the movie Blue Crush? The surfing movie with the
no way. This is
Kate.
Dennis, the jock, right? Yeah, he's the director of Blue Crush. Okay. Well, Arnie's also a director. He did Mother Night, which is a really good Kurt Vonnegut adaptation, but mostly television. He did many episodes of Fargo and Better Call Saul.
That's a great book, and Fargo and Better Call Saul are great shows and very well directed shows. So
yeah,
good on you.
He's good.
Keith Gordon.
Keith Gordon. Mm-hmm.
We also got good old Stephen Tash, who I had to stop and look us up. Like that's the guy that Bankman's shocking at the beginning of Ghostbusters, isn't it? And
I did the exact same thing. Yes, it's the guy from the beginning of Ghostbusters.
Yeah, he's like the fourth of the crew of bullies, just classic Stephen King bullies who just like idle at the level of attempted murder in broad daylight is like their first gear. That's just what they do on a Tuesday.
You must have had some horrible experiences with bullies, specifically like 1950s greaser bullies.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many vicious greasers in Stephen King, especially of this era. I guess they kind of reach their apotheosis in It. and then he's done with them. But it's like everything.
It and Stand By Me are the two big ones that jump out to me.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose the bully goes farther there in terms of getting like possessed. But I mean, almost lets him a little off the hook, as opposed to the just outright psychopathy of these guys.
They're great. A motley crew of character actors coming in to play those guys, including the nerd from Ghostbusters. The main bully. I mean, I was thinking before he showed up, this actually looks like teenagers. This cast has like people that look like they could be in high school, and then he shows up looking 37
Yeah, just like John Travolta
like,
roided out.
Never mind. Yeah, this Steven Tyler looking guy.
No, I mean it's fine. It's a Stephen King staple.
Need it, yeah.
Yeah, and like we need something else going on in this movie that's more than just a car that drives itself sneakily around town to run over people.
Well, you need people for him to run over. So like a crew of bullies that you can pick off one by one is, well, honestly, it's probably the least interesting or original way to get there. But a staple of this was like Stephen King kind of just churning shit out, not just the books, but like this was Dino De Laurentiis kind of like, okay, let's do Cat's Eye, let's do Creep Show, let's do like all of these over and over. They were making a million of these, and this is Carpenter coming off of a sadly disastrous performance of The Thing. Like this he had to, like, his biggest bomb by far, he had to kind of just make something normal, something he knew would be profitable.
I guess that was a pretty big bomb, but he's still the director of Halloween, though, right? So, and Escape from New York was a pretty big hit. So, I would think that he could that there were other Stephen King stories available to him that he could have chosen. I have to think De Laurentiis had more rights than just Christine. I don't know why he picked this one, really.
It wouldn't be my choice. If you wanted, like, Carpenter doing a King story, there's probably a dozen I could think of. I don't know. This is 83, I guess. So King's been active like 8 years, maybe. I don't remember when Carrie comes out, but he's not really. He doesn't have the huge body of work that he does now, obviously, to pull from. So I think it's just anything and everything gets a green light.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that there wasn't. I mean, I guess he was a name. Right, because we've had The Shining at this point. We've had Carrie.
We're selling movies on his name absolutely at this point. Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out now if they'd already made Cujo or not.
It's. I mean, it's right in the same glut of many of these getting made. Yeah.
Take the Saint Bernard over the car. Like just.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe it's setting him a challenge for himself of some sort. It's just, it's the premise of this I just cannot get over. It's
a killer car, yeah.
It's just so much easier to escape than a predator, a Terminator, an escape mental patient, or a cocaine bear. Those things that can chase you that don't need to be on their home turf at all times on asphalt.
I think that's why you see, like, there's not a lot of violence in this movie. I mean, yeah, there's bullies getting picked off. It's never particularly gory, though. I mean, when it's on fire and it runs over that guy and the corpse is on fire, that's kind of fun. But for the most part, this is almost a PG-13 style film. It just has a lot of bad language in it. That makes it hard. I don't think there's any blood in it. And I think that's because you can't really rely too heavily on Killer Carr as your main premise. You kind of have to do other things like love triangle with Carr, or sort of Carrie-esque nerd's revenge story, and the teenager stuff. There's other things going on in this to kind of make up for the fact that it's a Killer Carr movie at the end of the day.
Well, and you can half-assed a like detective investigating the Killer Carr deaths.
That's half-assed, yeah.
Story that comes in over halfway through. I mean, look, there's a couple of absolute gut-buster laughs in this movie. Arnie running through establishing his nerddom by running through a puddle in his driveway at the beginning of the movie is just freaking magical. It is the weirdest body flailing thing. Like, there's a gag in Scary Movie where Anna Faris runs away from her boyfriend after an argument and just waves her arms wildly back and forth. That is really, like, not even exaggerating what Artie is doing in this. And then the very, very end, this is standing in the junkyard, and Harry Dean Stanton just giving the surviving kids sage advice about the subtle art of fighting demonic cars is just fucking hilarious.
That's a phoned in Harry Dean Stanton performance for sure.
Well, yeah, how are you going to dig into this role?
There's nothing to do, but it's fun to have him there. Who's not phoning it in is Robert Prosky, though.
No, he is going for it.
This is the most character acting you've ever seen in one performance. God, he looks great in this too. He's just got, it looks like the wet end of a cigar. Just
yeah, he's just damp and oily, like his motor oil just sort of like sprayed over, like sprawled on his face and mm-hmm. body, like my kid after she eats a bowl of yogurt.
Yeah, he's having fun. I think this is the only Carpenter film he's done. He's a blast. He's a very Stephen King character. And
well, the most. I mean, he's a very Stephen King. He's the third most Stephen King character in this story, because you got that psychotic bully that wants to kill his fellow student with a knife at lunchtime at school, and then you've got the junkyard guy who sells him the car. That is just the classic. A lot of history on that car. You don't want to go down that road there.
I love him. That's the dude from Home Alone. Great name, Robert's Blossom.
We got Home Alone and Home Alone 2 represented here with the old.
Totally, yeah. Old fogies. You have the old men from both those films.
What a weird connection.
He's been in many films, but he's old man Marley first and foremost. So it's kind of fun to see him being like, nothing smells better than a new car, except of course for pussy. All those creepy old lines.
Oh my God.
A lot of good Stephen King creepy lines in this.
Stephen King's, unconvincing slang as well.
Shitters.
That Arnie referring to everybody as shitters.
Yeah.
That stuff that kind of works on the page and like an inner monologue where they get hung up on certain phrasing. But whenever you get it, you try and put it into actors' mouths, you end up in a dream catcher scenario. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one for that. I find all that charming. I do. I mean, this is the only way to appreciate this, really, I think, is as a Stephen King, just like trope machine, just look at all the Stephen King things going on in this. And there's stuff that you kind of appreciate about, like he was ahead of the curve on nerds being assholes.
Yes.
He kind of saw, looked at a 1950s nerd, with big old horn rim glasses that are fixed with tape, tripping over puddles and dropping garbage onto the street and being like, actually, if he had power, he'd be an asshole. I think if he were, if he really had the self-confidence to not be a nerd, he'd just be full of resentment.
Yeah. The fact that you're picked on doesn't mean that you're a nice guy, which sounds so self-evident once you say it out loud, but Hollywood especially needed 30 or 40 years to put that together. And the internet really like to demonstrate it, put it on blast for a decade straight before it started to sink in at all. But Stephen King, I think, just knew. I mean, I think by his own experience, he went from being a nerd, and then he got some money and notoriety and a huge cocaine habit, and became kind of an asshole and wasn't happy with himself about it.
And wrote about it. Yeah.
Wrote a lot about characters it. like Arnie or the Harold from the Stand.
That is the thing. Like, the Stand just has a better version of Arnie in it, for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same basic idea. And yeah, he knew what he was talking about clearly before the rest of us. And it was still, it was still locked into this sort of older archetype of the nerd, the George McFly of, this is a very George McFly performance when he's in his most nerd mode here.
Right. And then he turns into, I don't know, like John Travolta from Grease, I guess. Sort of the what he's going for with his look.
I guess I don't know what the archetype he is doing exactly there. But I don't know. What I felt mostly was like, it's a cocaine metaphor. Because if you're ever wondering if Stephen King's story is a metaphor for addiction, the answer is yes, it is. And so if this guy had just gotten into cocaine instead of Christine, the sort of becoming more self-confident, more self-possessed, and becoming a real asshole to his friends and family. That's all cocaine stuff. So that's kind of how I saw it this time through. Oh, it's another addiction metaphor from King. I don't even know if the movie's aware of that, but it feels like it.
Well, it was prime cocaine time, so not the most self-aware time of the 1980s Hollywood, especially the early 80s. You assume King was. I mean, he became aware of it at some point.
Oh yeah, like fully a good third of his books at least are veiled addiction metaphors. Yeah, including this one, I think.
Or not even so veiled. I mean, The Shining is not even particularly veiled about it.
No, not at all. And sometimes the characters are literally like in AA meetings for hundreds of pages. So yeah, he's not actually hiding it too much.
Right. Well, I mean, when you're writing, you're publishing 1,200 pages a year. Like you got to run out of ways to disguise it.
And I think that's how you end up with Christine, and the 700-page version of it is like you're just on an absolute tear, and just I don't want to say it's because he was on drugs, but yeah, I mean, clearly to some extent it was because he was on drugs.
It does feel like he's looking around his house and for objects to haunt.
Yes. There was a very, very distinct 80s period where that's what it was. Haunted word processor. Yes. Yeah. Haunted garbage disposal. Yes. It's all just kind of stuff that he looked around and saw, for sure.
And at the apex of the cocaine addiction, you get the Tommyknockers, which is I just haunted everything. Everything in my junk drawer all at once is now haunted.
Yep. That's a mess, man. Have you read the Tommy? I assume you have. If you knew that, yeah. Oh,
that one's 1,000 pages of just blather.
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't hate it when I read it at age 16. I think I at least had like a character that I was interested in, as I recall, but definitely not a revisitor.
I revisited it within the last 10 years, and it's a different experience. I remember being scared of it as a kid, and now it's a source of ridicule. It's a very silly book, but it's kind of
that must have violent. Been some part of a larger Stephen King project, right? Or you just targeted the Tommyknockers specifically?
Well, I remember it being real weird, and it was. I kind of taught me a lesson on revisiting some of these ones. Like I won't revisit Christine, probably. No, for example.
Here's a question for you: is there one of the lesser Stephen King adaptations, movies that you think is like actually underrated? That do you like a Needful Things or a Tommyknockers or something of that ilk? Not counting Stand By Me, The Shining, Shawshank as the major ones.
Of course, right. I mean, it's tough because I don't know what's underrated at this point. Is like Mike Flanagan has made Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep into movies, and I think both of those books are not great. They're kind of middle tier, maybe even lower middle. He did very good jobs with the movies, but I think those are acknowledged as good movies at this point, especially from what they came from. Let's see, like one that kind of like is a little better than it really needs to be, than its reputation. I think Cujo probably would be a good choice there.
I do kind of like Cujo. It's very, very mean.
It is mean. The movie's less mean, but that's appropriate for the movie, I think.
Right.
The truth is, most of them aren't great.
Well, I mean, there's so many of them that they're legit good ones. That in addition to the ones I didn't. I mean, did I mention Carrie? There's The Mist.
Carrie and The Mist are great. Yeah, those are terrific. The
It movies, I think people generally like.
Yeah,
and I think they're pretty good.
They are.
I feel like 1408 is one some people go to bat for, but I never saw.
That is a decent one, yeah. I mean, it's not doing anything too particularly special, but the book or the novella and the movie are both kind of like hitting a little bit above their weight class. Both cases, they're effective.
Yeah, I have kind of a soft spot for Children of the Corn.
Yeah, you said this.
And also Thinner. Like those are not good movies.
No,
but for some reason I was in a good mood when I saw them or something, and I have affection for them nonetheless. Thinner, I think, is just I'm impressed with actually going through with such a batshit premise.
It feels like sort of offensive somehow. Even in a way I can't even put my finger on. I mean, I can put my finger on ways it's offensive, but the cumulative effect feels almost like this is really crass. This is this is a really gross film in its heart, and that's something. I think my answer though is Silver Bullet. The werewolf film is pretty good, and it's pretty meat and potatoes werewolf movie. It is Gary Busey as a drunken uncle and Corey Haim as a kid with a souped-up motorcycle wheelchair that is nicknamed the Silver Bullet. So you see, it has double meaning. The title. Yeah, and they fight a werewolf. And it's solid.
We don't have enough solid werewolf movies. That's a genre that should be broader than it is, I feel.
I think it's hard. I think there's plenty of werewolf movies. It's just that most aren't that good.
Are there?
Yeah, sure.
Relative to other type of monster movies, I feel like there's a lot more vampire movies, more zombie movies.
Well, there's a lot more you can do with a vampire than a werewolf. Werewolf, you have like one plot. You can do one plot with a werewolf. You can't.
Well, that's not true. You can have an American Werewolf in London and an American Werewolf in Paris.
It's the same plot. It's
yeah. Well, you can do Ginger Snaps too. That's fun.
Ginger Snaps is the same plot. It's really good though. That's the thing. I think there's a surprising number of good werewolf movies for how unelastic the plot is. Like, there's Ginger Snaps, there's American Werewolf in London, there's The Howling, there's Silver Bullet, and probably a few other good ones out there somewhere.
Not a fan of Jack Nicholson's Wolf.
I'm not really. That is an attempt to do something different with the werewolf story, though.
Yeah, that's true. I've never seen the movie version of Firestarter.
Both versions are not great, much like the book that they came from. This is part of that run of mediocrity when he was just kind of churning them out. Well, like that ever really stopped.
I don't know. I liked Firestarter when I read it as a teenager. I kind of feel like that's the one that Carpenter should have done rather than Christine.
Oh, I'd agree with that. Yeah, it's all weird anti-government stuff, and there's all the best parts in Christine are when things are blowing up. So yeah,
and it's Firestarter's crying out for a synth score.
Oh yeah, well he did the score for the remake.
Oh really?
Yeah, and it rules. It's the only thing in the movie that works.
I'm sure it. Yeah, it must
just play that on YouTube.
He really hasn't lost his fastball when it comes to that. We'll get to The Ward eventually, and maybe filmmaking fell off at a certain point, but he's still pumping out those theme albums that are great.
Mm-hmm. There are things in this movie, in Christine, that I think are pretty cool, pretty effective, and that I like a lot. A lot of it is practical effects. There are some really neat things to look at in this movie. The car fixing itself, for example, is just a cool effect. It's just neat to see, and you find out how they did it. It's all played backwards, kind of like a car just crumpling from the inside, and they repeat it. But I just love the staging of that too, where it's part of the whole car as sex metaphor thing, where he's like, okay, show me what you got, and it fixes itself in front of him. That's all. Like that middle section of the movie, I think is really effective when it's being a love triangle between a guy, a girl, and a car.
Yeah, I feel like the most effective the movie gets is that deterioration, I guess, building up and deterioration of Arnie, and him becoming an asshole. And I feel like they don't go far enough with that. That I want him to go full blown insane and actually kill somebody. I mean, he gets in the car at the very end. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I would prefer the reveal to be that he was driving the car or something when he killed when the bullies were killed or something.
I think there is something to, like, I don't know. Do you want him to come back at all? Is there any drama and tension to be mined from the reclamation or not reclamation of Arnie's soul here? I think there is some. I think he is the protagonist of the film somehow. I mean, the novel is written first person from the jock best friend's point of view, so he's the protagonist of the book. But I think the movie is definitely about Arnie, and I think it's a good performance. The character is just kind of an irredeemable asshole, which is, I don't know, it's kind of one of the things I like about it.
Well, yeah, that's what I say. If he's going to be irredeemable, I feel like they only went 80% of the way there. Like, they don't redeem him, but they don't have him actually, like, get any blood on his hands.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love his death. That's really great. And he's got the piece of windshield sticking into his stomach, and his last act is to lovingly cradle the hood ornament of Christine. That's pretty good. That's as he's dying, and it's played like Romeo and Juliet or something. Oh, that's super fun. That kind of stuff, that melodrama. I wanted more of that, really. Like, yeah, look, this is not a great film. Obviously, this is, I think, the third time I've watched it, and I think it is a grower. I think I've appreciated more each time, and part of that, I'm sure, is just sort of Stephen King checklist stuff. It's kind of fun to see Carpenter do that. I think he does a good job of keeping this thing moving. It could be a pretty bad experience if he wasn't just super competent at framing shots and moving the camera around and keeping the pace in the editing bay and just handling these practical effects, which I think are great. They must have destroyed, I don't know, at least a dozen 58 Plymouth Furies making this, right? There sure are a lot of broken versions of this car in this movie.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of different levels of battle damage Christine action figures you could put out. Yeah, Carpenter is good. He's a good filmmaker. And that stuff just sort of like draws attention to, God, I wish we were putting these skills to something I cared about, like even half an inch. And particularly as such a come down off the thing. Like, oh my God, you just made one of the best movies of all time. And now we're wasting our time with this.
It feels like, just sort of like, okay, I just got to get a job. I just got to do a thing, that's got to be the story behind it, where we're just like, I need a green light. I need to get back on the saddle because, this thing movie I really took a bath on the Thing movie.
Yeah, but that doesn't preclude somebody from doing genuinely good work and creating something good too. I mean, because like you say, it's not that he's doing bad work here. I just don't express. And maybe it is, it's all about my relationship to cars. I've never cared about that. I've owned a few cars in my lifetime. I've never had any.
I've never had a sexual relationship with any of them. Yes, of course.
No. Well, I've had a sexual liaison with them, but it was purely transactional. There weren't any like emotions involved. I was very upfront about that. No, I don't know. I've never had a deep personal connection. I've never given it a woman's name or anything. Like, there's just conveyances to get me around that I kind of resent having when I have to use them, because I hate the process of parking. I don't know.
There's no fun in one of these classic era, like 75 years ago now, car models that are, just these gigantic tanks with shark fins that talk about trying to get into a garage. This thing probably would take me, I don't know, 25 minutes to park this thing correctly. The way these old cars turn. I don't know. Is there any sort of romanticism to that? Any sort of appeal to, like, I don't know, looking back on like the American graffiti era when.
No, not for cars. Me. I think I'm the oddball here, though, in terms of like, growing up in the Midwest when I did that. Right. Most of my peers would have some level of nostalgia for that type of thing, but it just, for whatever reason, that stuff has never stuck to me.
When I was a teenager, I was driving a minivan with like fake wood paneling on the side. I was pretty psyched to have that. I never had a cool car, never once. So maybe I don't know. I'm missing out on that too, perhaps.
You know what? I lied to you a little bit about never nicknaming a car, because when I was in high school, I would drive around my mother's purple Ford Windstar minivan that my friends and I nicknamed the Eggplant.
Oh, so okay. Well, it rolls right off. Rolls right off the tongue, just like Christine.
Yeah. Exactly. But I don't know if can you do a haunted minivan? Story.
Why not? Sure. Oh, the door slid closed on its own. I don't know. Not really.
Yeah. You could be trapped in there more easily, I guess. I don't know. I guess it did trap Robert Prosky to his demise.
I don't quite get that death. You kind of got to really squint your eyes to see how that's a killing move there. I guess he is rather rotund, but does that?
I guess so. It's elegant and direct compared to somehow magically making somebody choke on their hamburger at the drive-in.
That's a cool scene, though. I like it with the light that comes from the dashboard, and it's just a well-shot scene, I think.
The cinematography is not the issue here.
Right. Okay,
it's just the material. We're repeating ourselves. So,
okay. One more thing. The way that the way that he takes like 1950s tropes and songs, and the Greasers are part of this, but makes them sinister. That's sort of a Stephen King thing, I guess, but I like that. I think that's kind of a neat subversive thing, because that's always such a as presented in movies, a comforting, safe time that boomers really like to reminisce about. 1950s culture, car culture, rock music culture, and with nerds and greasers and stuff like that. And here, whenever you hear 50s music, that means like, Christine's around. It's sinister. That's cool, right? That's something.
It's a little something. I like that sort of in theory, but compared to like the levels that Halloween or The Thing work on, like,
yeah, well,
it's not enough. I expect more from Mike Carpenter by this point.
I guess we're in quite a run here. This is this run basically Assault, Halloween, The Fog, Escape from New York, The Thing, Christine.
Yeah, I mean, I think The Fog's just okay, but the others, you're right, that is quite a run.
Mm-hmm.
And The Thing is so towering in my estimation that it's an especially steep cliff there.
It is. All right, well, that's Christine. This is I don't know. I think it's kind of okay if you go into it knowing what you're watching and just sort of accepting. Well, it's a killer car movie. It has some character actors in it. It's and you get to see cars reinflate themselves and get crushed by bulldozers and stuff. That is not a compelling argument for Christine. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I don't think there is one to be made. It's not. It's a very lesser Stephen King book, and it's a lesser John Carpenter movie. So from here we go to Starman next, right? That's like a real outlier, because that's the feel good Carpenter movie.
Yeah, that's like him doing Amblin kind of movie, 80s romance a little bit, sci-fi.
It's another one I haven't seen, so but I'm a lot more curious about that one.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's got great people in it: Jeff Bridges, Karen Allen. Yeah. So I want to see star in a movie in the 80s.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. So
all right,
we'll be back with that one shortly.
All right, thank you, Al.
Drive safe, folks.
Yeah, bad to the bone.